Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is David Politis. I'm the founder and CEO here at BetterCloud. And today you're joining us for a conversation about top IT habits of successful unicorns. We're really excited about today's panel. We have three great panelists with us. And just before we jump into the panel, I want to go through a little bit of housekeeping. So first of all, for those of you joining us today, this panel is going to be recorded and we will send it out after we're finished to everyone who's registered. And so if there's items that are here that you're interested in, feel free to take notes, but we'll also be sending it out afterwards. Second, we'll be taking questions in the GoToWebinar app. So in the top right of your screen, you can ask questions there, and I'll be reading through those questions and delegating them out to the different panelists as we go. We're probably going to take questions more towards the end, but we'll give ourselves some time, probably 15 to 20 minutes at the end for questions. So throughout, as you have them, just go ahead and ask them. That'll help me. I can go through them and I'll dole them out at the end. Also, if you have not joined Better IT, you should join Better IT. It's our Slack community, completely free. It takes 1 minute to sign up. We've got thousands of IT professionals in that Slack community. It's called Better IT, betterit.cloud. If you want to sign up, there's a webinars channel there, and that's where you can see people who are on this webinar, attending this webinar. They'll be talking, having conversation there, and we'll also be, we announce our next webinars there as well. So if you have not joined Better IT, please do so and join the webinars channel. So with that, the topics that we're going to be covering today, we're going to really run the spectrum here. Everything from tactical, how actual projects, things that these IT leaders have done in their organizations, all the way to just personally and professionally, how do these panelists, how do these IT leaders stay up to speed on best practices, on security trends, IT trends. So we're going to be really running the gamut here in terms of topics. Honestly, we're probably going to run out of time, but there's a number of subjects that you can expect to hear about today. And I've talked to each of these panelists, some cases for many years, some cases we just met. Either way, I've had conversations with them about all these topics, and there's some really interesting insights here. And I think specifically, when you look at this particular group, when you look at the organizations that they work for, when you look at the teams that they work in, this is a very unique group. Honestly, when we talked about putting this panel together with my team, and we were talking about it, we said this is going to be pretty amazing. If we could actually pull off getting 3 IT leaders from 3 unicorns who have dealt with the challenges that are being dealt with in these organizations are it's the same challenges I think everyone in IT deals with. I mean, from all the thousands of customers, all the tens of thousands of people I've interacted with over the years, IT leaders, these are the same challenges. They're just magnified. The problems are just bigger and they come at you faster in the environment of being in a unicorn. So when we look at the panelists today, we've got, the 3 panelists combined have over 48 years of IT experience. And that includes working at 7 unicorns combined. Just to be clear, they only work at 3 today, 1 each. But over time, they've worked at 7 unicorns, which is pretty amazing. When you think about it, and you think about how long some of these companies have been around, and for them to be part of that. Second, the companies that they're representing, this is the craziest stat. We went and looked, and they've had over 200% growth across the board, at least 200% growth in the last 18 months. Again, to my point, if you think about why is this an interesting panel, why is there value in hearing what these IT leaders have to say, when you have to deal with 200, 250, 300% growth in a 12, 18, 24-month period, I promise you, the challenges you have to deal with, everything is magnified. And so this is crazy. I mean, you just look at the numbers here, going from 700 to 2,200 people, 250 to 1,300, 350 to 1,300. It's amazing. And lastly, combined, these groups, these organizations have a combined valuation of $7 billion. And so we're really honored and really excited to have these IT leaders with us today. I'm personally excited. I know them. I've worked with them over the years, and so I'm honored to be moderating this panel. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and we're going to just quickly go through, and I'll introduce you, and then once I do, if you can just introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about yourself, your background, the company you're with, what that company does, just quick introduction. So first up, I'd like to introduce Vicky Couturier, who is at Envision. And Vicky, if you want to just give a quick background on yourself and the company, and just short background.
Cool. Thank you so much, David. So thanks everyone for being here, and nice to meet you, Anthony and Matt. So I'm currently at Envision as the IT systems director, and my background is all the unicorns, Zendesk, Uber, and just setting up systems and customer support throughout the last maybe 15 years, and making sure that everything is working together and in this fast growth. I haven't been at a place yet that didn't have, at least 30, 50 new hires a month.
Great.
So I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you, Vicky. So next up is Anthony Anchetta from Lime. So Anthony, if you could just quickly introduce yourself and the company and what the company does, and yeah.
Thanks, David. Anthony Anchetta from Lime, first technical employee at Lime, the IT manager currently. And I pretty much run the gamut. Lime is a micromobility platform. We are not only a scooter company, we have everything from cars to electric vehicles to mopeds to scooters to bikes. And we have a global outreach where we're pretty much, and I think we're in 50 something countries right now, and all that technical stuff falls all under my team. And so a little bit about me. I started my career out in the U.S. Navy as a systems administrator, spent 10 years in the Navy, went to a cool little design firm called IDEO and spent 8.5 years there, and then moved through startups, landing me here at Lime.
Great. And next we have Matt Kaufman from Toast.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Matt from Toast. Toast is a all-in-one restaurant management system. We started off as just a basic POS system about 5-6 years ago now, but we've grown to really cover all restaurant needs, kind of from the back end piece of it. I've been doing help desk, so I'm the IT help desk manager based out of our Omaha office. I've been doing IT help desk work for the past decade plus. So done everything from call center, third party help desk, resetting passwords, to working at a university, and now at Toast, which is the hyper growth unicorn that it is.
Great. Thank you. So now maybe Anthony, I'll go to you. If you could you talked about being the first technical employee at Lime. Could you just tell us, in the time you've been at Lime, how things have evolved? I mean, when you got there, how big was Lime? How big is it today? How big was the IT org? How big is it today? Maybe just a little
Sure.
bit of that.
Yeah, so I was the first technical employee. I've been with the company a little over a year, so it's been a year and I think a week today. When I first started out at Lime, I think we were somewhere around 250, 300 employees. There was no active count because we didn't have a system to actually tell us how many full-time employees there were, which is a whole different story. A short tidbit, I went to HR and said, who all works for the company? And they said, we don't know. So that sent me off on my first data finding mission, to try to scour Google Apps and try to scour all our tools to understand who worked for the company, who didn't work for the company, what accounts were still active, what weren't. And at that point in time, for the next 3 months, it was pretty much me and one contractor, trying to put in place onboarding and offboarding, trying to go back and understand what systems we actually owned and were paying for, to the point of now where we actually have 7 employees, and 7 employees within the actual IT team. But the company has this hyper growth where we have somewhere close to 25 to 3,500 contingent workforce, close to 700 to 900 FTEs, depending on the day. And we've pretty much onboarded those people solely within the IT team. So my help desk team, we just started hiring systems engineers and application engineers. So the team has just started to grow. Yeah.
That's great. And and I'm going to come back to that growth in the IT org from 1 to 7 in a minute. Vicky, Envision is a very unique company, because of the lack of an office, really. Can you just talk a little bit about that and your experience there, and just talk about that a little bit for everyone, because I think that layers on a whole nother set of challenges. If you could talk about that, and as well as the scale, and what that looks like globally.
Absolutely. So similar to Anthony, I was the first IT person at Envision. At the time, we had a little over 300 employees, and we have no offices. So everyone works from home, whatever home is, around the globe. I think last time we have 48 countries that we have employees in. So for us, which is great, the challenges for IT is getting equipment to those employees when they start, getting equipment back when they leave. And I had the same things with how many apps everybody's using. And when you're not in the same office, if somebody's not responding, it's hard to kind of go and tap on the shoulder and ask, hey, what are you using? What are you doing? And how many employees was the same thing. I was sent an Excel sheet with employees we thought were still here, some that were not. And again, not being in an office, you can't go to the desk and see oh, that person's no longer here. They were a contractor, no longer here. So it's great being able to work from anywhere around the world. We do everything through Zoom, and we use a VAR to send our equipment around. For IT, it's a different world. No one else, as far as I know, no one else has done this before. No one has no office.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say no office, a lot of people, but okay, so where do you go? Do you have it? No, we use WeWork, but we just have no office. So obviously we don't do any network systems admin stuff. Everything is cloud, and everything is whatever you have in your home. So yeah, it's a totally different challenge than I've ever had in my career.
Yeah, I think that's to me, first of all, culturally, I find that fascinating, and I think it's, to your point, I don't think anyone's built a company at massive scale with no office. And for IT, it just is. Whenever I talk to Vicky, I think it's a whole different layer and different set of challenges. So we'll come back to that as well. Matt, for you, when you got to Toast, can you talk a little bit about kind of what the state of IT was, maybe when you arrived, and some of the changes that you went through? Also, I think geographically some changes that happened, but if we could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a little different than Anthony and Vicky, because I was not the first tech employee. I was the first help desk manager, though. So I came into a team of 5 and started managing them remotely, because like I said, I'm out of our Omaha, Nebraska office, and our headquarters is in Boston. So the state of IT was okay. State of the help desk, however, was not so okay. We had somewhere around 700 open tickets and um, that were years old. So it was kind of a mess. But IT as a whole, it was okay. We had onboarding, we had offboarding. They weren't perfect, but they were decent. They got the job done. We had some processes put into place that worked. Again, they weren't perfect, but they got us by. So really, that's where the focus has been on the past year and a half is making those a bit more perfect.
Great.
And geographically, yeah, I mean, so being in Omaha, I was one of the first dozen employees, and we're already up to 250, 260, somewhere around there, employees just out of our Omaha office.
Great. So I think, one of the things all of you said, and this, you said this to me in the pre-discussions, but you've also said it here, is onboarding and offboarding feels like it is just fundamental to doing your job. I mean, your job, a big part of it is dealing with onboarding and offboarding. Everything from how do you get equipment to people, how do you get the equipment back from people, to the applications that they're using, to the scale, and just trying to get your arms around that. So maybe if we can go through, Anthony, maybe we start with you. And when you look at onboarding and offboarding, how did you attack that? How have you attacked that? How do you think about automation in that process? All of that.
Sure. So when I started, there wasn't really a onboarding or offboarding process. People's onboarding was, hey, someone buy a computer, and literally people started 7 days a week at any given time. So when I started, everyone was like, hey, can you create these accounts? Can you buy this computer? And I'm like, wait, hold on, stop. I was spending my whole day onboarding people constantly. So I sat down with HR, and we had a very long conversation about how are we doing this right now? What are the actual touch points that we need to address to make this a successful onboarding, and then go from there, right? And so one of my biggest things that I did was implement BetterCloud, and make sure that I could try to automate a lot of the key applications within the stack, so that I wouldn't have to sit and spend 3.5 hours, or the contractor spend 4 hours a day onboarding people globally, because we're hiring people in France, people in Australia, people in APAC, people here in the United States, and sort of automate that process. We also did the same with the offboarding process. That alone, just implementing BetterCloud, implementing some tools so we can understand, well, implementing a help desk software also. There was no help desk software at all. So we could actually understand what people needed at onboarding, and then go from there.
Great. Vicky, when you think about the onboarding, what was the, I assume if you're the first person joining, there's not a lot of onboarding, offboarding process in place. What did you have to deal with when you got there? And how did you deal with that? How did you attack that?
So yeah, when I came on, there was a couple people that were doing, a little bit of HR, a little bit of accounting, a little bit of everything. So I came on, and there's no system in place. It was the same thing, like go to Amazon and select what you want, and for equipment, and then it was shipped, and I didn't get my stuff until almost 3 days after I started. And then as far as access, there's one person that knew about some access, but we had over 400 applications at the time. So I connected with the VP of security and the person in HR, and went over what they knew we had. And then Okta was already implemented, and then so I brought BetterCloud so that I could at least manage, G Suite in a easier, quickly manner, and then went through what what steps to take to make sure that people had their equipment on time, and so that's when I selected a VAR to help with that. and set up some timing to make sure that people had everything that they need. And then for systems, it's just as we went along, we had, the 30 that we knew of. And those were the ones that I made sure that was set up for automation. And then over time, we found out more and more. And there are a lot of apps out there that you can't automate with BetterCloud or anything else. It's just like onboarding, offboarding. Somebody set it up under their own account, paying it for their own credit with their own credit card. So the challenges then became, what do we have? How do we find out what we have? And how do we onboard and offboard, and do those teams really need those 4 different applications that they're using? So then it was just all about me figuring out what those applications were. And I started a little over 2.5 years ago. And there's still times that there's still applications out there that we don't know about. And that's, for us, like shadow IT is a huge issue.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. So Matt, when you hear Vicky talking about some of this, have you, when you look at onboarding, offboarding, again, you got there a little bit later, 45 people in place, but first on help desk. What was the state of things, and more specifically, how do you think about this array of applications that people need access to, have access to? How do you view that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so, and the second piece is kind of what we're working on now. The onboarding, we had BetterCloud in place when I came in, and we had it dialed in pretty well. We've tweaked things along the way, added more workflows, added more connectors, things like that. But the onboarding piece was always the piece that was kind of it was the easy piece to tackle. The offboarding was sometimes a bit more. Like Vicky was saying, we have a lot of people in the field, so getting equipment back has always been an issue that we've been tackling. But yeah, shadow IT is a big issue with us as well. A lot of people just kind of say, hey, I want access to some application. We're like, we don't know what that is. We did not know that we had that in the environment. We don't know anything about this, and they're expecting us as IT to handle it. So we're taking some measures to try to get a decent scope of what we have in the environment, to try to figure out then who is actually managing it. And one of my guys did a great job, and he at least went through our Okta apps that we obviously knew about to figure out who issues the license, who gets it by default, who doesn't, who can't even touch it, even if they wanted to, things like that. So we're slowly chipping away at that shadow IT piece, and I'm hoping that by the end of the year it'll be in a much better place than it is now.
Okay, we're gonna try something a little bit different here. I'm gonna do word association. I'm gonna say a word. You tell me kind of one sentence, if you will, of just what comes to mind immediately when I say it. So for Matt, when I say automation, what comes to mind?
Needed.
Anthony, automation.
Life.
Vicky, automation.
Can't live without it.
Okay. Yeah, I think because when you're all talking about the onboarding, you're talking about the offboarding. I actually had this realization in some of our conversations prior to this of, it's like the most repetitive, menial, manual process that kind of exists, but it's also at the same time, it's a process will exist forever. I mean, if there's something you can count on, people will be hired and fired or leave the company, period, forever. And arguably maybe one of the most important parts of your role. So it's this crazy thing of like something that's repetitive, that's menial, that's just not, you have to click 100 times to offboard or onboard someone. But then on the flip side, something is going to happen every day, all day, especially for companies like yours. So it's just interesting. When I did the interviews with you before this, that was one of the things that kept kind of popping up in my head. Another question, is when you think about organizations like yours, back to my point when we started this, is I think that you are you're at the forefront. I mean, what you're doing in IT and the mindsets that you have is, I believe, what the mainstream is going to feel in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So one thing that all of you mentioned in one way or another is this idea around, when you talk about onboarding, is the enablement element of that. How do you, to Vicky's point, you don't want someone to start and 3 or 4 days later get the access, their equipment. I just want to get everyone's take, and maybe we start with Matt this time. Just the philosophy around employees, enablement. Like you talked to me about this before. I'm curious, how you think about that. What is the philosophy of IT when it comes to your end user?
Yeah, so my big focus this year, and I mean, and I'm sure it'll be the same next year and the year after, and pretty much always, is the end user experience. So everyone talks about the customer service, but I really look at it as more of the customer experience. So I mean, back to onboarding, I want to make sure that everyone day one at their desk has everything that they need. So that's talking with the managers to make sure that that we know that the people are actually starting in the office versus field. It's working with HR to make sure that we know how many people are coming on as quickly, as early in the process as possible, to make sure that we have enough equipment. So yeah, I mean, it's just in making sure that they have the access, whether that's through automation, which is awesome, or manually clicking through it. Just having that experience be the best from day one. Not only makes them feel better, not only makes the company look good, but it makes IT look good. If they know from day one that they can come to us and we can get their issue taken care of, their equipment or whatever needed as quick as possible, then that's where we can shine.
Yep. To sort of build on what Matt was saying, I think it's the same here, right? And so one of the things that we really have to think about is like customer experience, and it's something that I sort of drilled into HR the whole first 2 months as we were building the onboarding process. If we have people starting all times a day, every hour of the day, that experience is not good for our clients. And if people's first impression of the company is, oh, they don't have their stuff together, I don't have access to these tools, I can't actually do my job, we're not going to retain these people as employees. And it already, sort of salts a brand new experience. And we don't want that, right? And so knowing that we have that in our power to be able to set up the best possible experience. You may not get it the first time, you may not get it the second time. It is a constant process of iteration, but you'll get it eventually. And so for us, I mean, we're in iteration V9 or 10 or something of our help desk onboarding. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, rip it apart. If you see holes in it, or if you see you can do something better, feel free. I tell my team all the time, hey, feel free, take the creative juice and go after it. Just make sure that you have 2 sets of eyes on it before it goes live, right? And that's my only thing there. But I think there's so many different things within this, because you have the hardware aspect, and anytime you have a dispersed workforce, you have to have different supply channels. You have to have someone in Netherlands that can actually get computers, monitors, mice and keyboards in less than a week. You have to have someone in APAC. You have to have someone in Australia, and there's not many vendors out there that can do all that for the whole world. And if they can, they're separate subdivisions, and then you have to work within each subdivision. So it can be challenging, right? And so we want to always keep our mind on the emotional aspect of this too, that this is a person that's starting hopefully a really exciting job. They're excited to be with the company, and we want to get them up and running. And from the company perspective, it does no employee any good if they're sitting around for a week waiting for access to tools, waiting just for a computer, or to be able to access a dashboard, or create a report or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's really, this is like the perfect marriage between the company and the employee. Like the company is happy, to your point, because people are up and running quickly. You don't want people sitting around. And the person who just joined, emotionally, I think that's a good, that's a really interesting point. Like emotionally, right? They want to come in, they want to be up and running also. They want to have access, they want to they want to contribute, they want to at least feel like they're there. And it's really falls, honestly, I mean, I think at this point a huge portion of that is IT. I mean, I would say more than 50% of that falls on IT. And making sure that they have access to the right systems and the right communication systems so that they know what's happening, that they're on the right calendar invites, things like that. Vicky, are you there still? Okay. So Anthony, I'm going to go back to you just because we had a conversation where you mentioned that the population that you have and maybe the change that has occurred in the population that you're supporting over the years in IT. I would love to have that conversation because I think it goes actually to that exact, it's just a follow on to what you just said. And if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the IT industry for a while in support roles. And so what we used to do on a help desk or in systems administration was, software support, right? Someone didn't know how to download a PDF or set aspect ratio or use this tool because they just have never used it before, or they came from Lotus Notes to Exchange or whatever the case may be. I'm telling my age. But now I don't think that's the case, right? So we are no longer having to sit down and do application support. We have a more technical user base. And because we have a technical user base, we can say, okay, cool, here's access, go run. And that's the last time we hear about that from them because they know how to use these tools. They know how to query databases. They know how to create the files, reporting, and everything that they need for their day-to-day job. And I think that's a huge shift for the IT team because now we don't have to spend that one-to-one and show someone, okay, this is how you use this application. And we can spend those connection, that soft touch time trying to understand what they actually need in their job to be more efficient, to be more productive, and to help them in their journey in the company.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you think about that population. And I think you said a statement, you said, I wrote down, retain employees. Like part of the job and part of the idea of giving them the systems that they want and part is the retention aspect. And I think that goes to what the changing population is, that they understand what technologies they want to use. And so I think that's a big piece of it. Matt, for you, how do you stay in front of the business? Like, how do you stay in front of knowing what the team needs, what the company, your end users, how do you stay in front of that?
So, I mean, a lot of it's done just over Slack, talking with the different stakeholders, whether it's HR or managers, or going up to them and talking to them. Then it's also listening to the actual end user themselves also. I try to have my guys kind of sit around the floor. We have a walk up help desk. But as long as one of them's there, then I kind of tell the other people to go sit at sit on the bean bags and sit on the couches and stuff, and kind of not eavesdrop on conversations, but kind of eavesdrop on, if they hear someone getting mad at their mouse or whatever, or if they hear a whole bunch of people cursing at the headsets or whatnot, then to bring it back to the team, and so we can kind of brainstorm around different projects and stuff, so we can even try to get ahead of issues before they become big, massive issues. So it's really just listening to the customer, listening to the stakeholders, and then also I try my best to listen to my team as well. I'm not the most technical anymore. I've been in management for long enough that some of my heart, my troubleshooting skills aren't the best these days. But that's also why I hire people that are good at that stuff. So I trust them a lot more to come up with ideas, to have fun with it, kind of like Anthony was saying, be creative around issues and everything.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think the idea of being out in front of the employees, the end users, I think that's a big thing. Not hiding from the problems, but actually proactively trying to find the problems, like you just described. I think that's again, it's another. This is the new way. I mean, from my experience talking to IT leaders, this is the new way of doing IT. Is being in front of the problem, trying to be proactive to it. Vicky, for you, because you don't have a physical space, so you can't do what you can't have your team sitting around with the end users. I mean, for you, how do you stay in front of the business? How do you understand the needs? How are you proactive?
So, a good example of everybody working from home and not having an office is what just happened to me. The network dropped off, and it's things are unpredictable, and you never know what's going to happen. So, so yeah. So the way I stay in front of it is so I and like Matt was just saying, I've been in management for so long, like I'm not as good anymore at automation or any technical things that I used to do. I'm not in the forefront, so I hire the best. And the team that I have right now, for support and systems engineering, they're amazing. I'm very lucky. So what we do is we speak with all the different departments, very close to the security team, very close to the people ops team, so that we can, know what departments are using, from apps to hardware, what is best for, what the business is working on at the time. And we work closely with the biz tech team, and they know what people are purchasing, what they're about to purchase, which apps they're going to start doing without. And from that, we work towards making sure that the app is closed off properly, or everybody is onboarded properly, with IT being the owners of that application, and making sure that we do an automation with BetterCloud, so that we can, if you start on the HR department, what you need, all the apps that we know of, everything that's been approved is onboarded that way. So when you start, you have everything that you need right at the start of it. Anything else is just, again, like he will hear from somebody from security, hey, did you guys hear about this app so and so is using? And then we'll start working with the head of that department to see what, why they're using it. Have they gone through the proper process to set that application up?
Great. And now we'll shift gears just for 1 second. If you think about broadly, from a career perspective, you've all been in IT for a while. You've all been rising, in the ranks, and especially in the types of organizations that you're working in. My question is, how do you stay up to speed? And we'll start maybe with you, Matt. Are there any conferences you go to, anything you read every day, anything you do, just a routine, something? How do you stay up to speed on best practices? How do you know what your peers are doing? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually use LinkedIn a lot for that. I've started following kind of as much as I can, as much as seems interesting to me as well. So I always I'm on there browsing what they're sharing, browsing what they're commenting on and things like that. I've also this past year been an HDI member, so the Help Desk Institute. They focus on bigger call center type organizations, but I've been able to use some of their documentation tweak it some to kind of match what what we do. A lot of theirs is based around phone calls and stuff like that. We don't, at the help desk, we don't take phone calls. We do emails and we do Slack and walk-ups, but the ideas around it are, it's very customer centric, and so I use kind of those bigger organizations, the more the support piece of it to figure out where the next steps that we should go is. As if we double again next year, we'll be almost 5,000 people. So that's a completely different company than what we are now. So
okay,
yeah.
That's great. Vicky, for you, how do you stay up to speed on best practices or talking to your peer? How do you learn? How do you keep learning?
So I keep learning by LinkedIn is a big one that I use, and different IT groups on LinkedIn, Twitter, Slack, and I also connect with peers. I'll go and have lunch or after hour drinks and talk with my peers and see what's going on. Conferences, I try to go to some conferences, and I really look to my team for a lot of what's going on. They're more at the forefront. They're getting the tickets daily. They're talking to all of our employees, and they're talking to their friends, and they're hearing what's new, what's coming up, what people are wanting, what the needs are. So I really look up to them to get that information, and then research it and talk to my peers, and then see what we can do and see how we can help.
Great. Anthony, for you, how do you stay up to speed on best practices and what's changing in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So everything that they just said, I set a personal goal for myself to at least read 30 to 45 minutes, a day, in tech-related news. So Stack Overflow. I'm in a bunch of LinkedIn groups, whether it be around security or IT or ITIL or emerging practices. I try to do at least a dinner a month with people out in the community or a meetup. Luckily, we're here in the Silicon Valley, and there's a whole lot of ITs around. So I try to do that. And then, I just talk to my peer group. I mean, we all stay pretty much in touch, and like I do a lot of checking in with all my military friends too, and see what they're doing in that scope of the world, and just go from there.
So we're going to, in a second here, we're going to start going to questions. Maybe in one more minute, we're going to go to questions. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them in the GoToMeeting app, and I'll go through them when we get there. So I would say, in terms of, if each of you look at what you've done in maybe one sentence, if you could just tell me what has been you've been there a year, 18 months, like, what is the thing, what's the biggest win? What is that one thing that you've done that if you left tomorrow, you would point back and say, I achieved that? Maybe Anthony, we'll start with you. What would you say is the biggest win to date that you've had?
Ooh, I think there's two, but I'll stick to this one. So moving corporate headquarters and our logistics hub, we moved offices this past year 4 different times. And so we moved corporate headquarters 3 times. We moved our—
In one 12-month period?
Yes.
Wow.
All in less than a week, mind you. The longest period we had to move any office was 5 days. So that was a huge win, to shut down business on a Thursday and be up and running in a new location on Monday.
Wow. Okay. Vicky, biggest win to date?
Onboarding, from the automation of equipment arriving to automation of the applications, and the support.
Okay. Matt, biggest
the
win.
first
Sorry. Matt, biggest win.
I would say getting the Omaha office up and running. So when I started, they were training out of a hotel conference room. Then we had a shared workspace, not even a WeWork because it wasn't that nice. It was essentially conference rooms we were working out of. So I got our office up and running from a network standpoint to helping painters and electricians and stuff like that. But now we have three fully completed, very nice floors in a building that has our logo on it. So
That's great. That's awesome. Okay, we'll do word association again. So this word, when I say BetterCloud, Anthony, what do you think?
Wow. BetterCloud has enabled us to have an onboarding and offboarding process when we didn't have the bodies.
Okay, Matt, BetterCloud.
can I just steal Anthony's answer because that was pretty good.
No problem. No problem. I'll just do a +1. Vicky.
I'm gonna third that.
Yes, there
third
we
that.
go. I like that. Okay, thank you, Anthony. Thank you for that. Okay, let me go here. Let me look at the questions here. Sorry, I gotta find this questions part. Okay, so one question. Okay, it's a good one. What do you use for patch management and endpoint management? So anyone want to grab that one?
So
Sure.
right now we use Mobile Iron. And so we're still building it out. It's a process of iteration. There are limitations to what you can and cannot do, but we're doing pretty well with it right now for a global fleet because we're also managing what we call a ops phone. And so all of our warehouses have multiple up to 15 to 20 mobile phones that we also manage and restrict, not to mention other laptop endpoints and things of that nature.
Okay, Vicky?
We use a Fleetsmith, which is we're at probably 90% Apple, and so Fleetsmith allows us to do all of our patch management and any of our we don't do images for our computers, but we do here's the security apps that you need to have and the password policies. So Fleetsmith allows us to do that seamlessly, and it allows us to keep a smaller team for the systems engineering because Fleetsmith takes care a lot of the background and what needs to be programmed and set up to push that stuff out.
Vicky, while I have you, who do you use to procure? Who do you use to effectively procure and deliver equipment to remote onboardings?
The company's called North Bay. They're here in Emeryville.
Okay, great.
Across the
Thank
bay.
you. Next question here is, how do you tackle the idea of sustainability with regards to end-of-life hardware? That's a good question. How do you tackle the idea of sustainability with regards to end-of-life hardware?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different programs out there that will allow you to donate, recycle, or deal with your end-of-life hardware sustainably. So we're in the works for a couple of different relationships in that sector, and so we don't have anything cemented just yet, but we're working on it.
That's an interesting question. Anyone, Matt or Vicky, you have a solution there?
Yeah, we use North Bay, and I mean it's really hard to end of life, and I've always put in a 3-year policy at all the companies I've worked at to recycle or to for the user to upgrade their machine. So North Bay is really great at recycling, donation. I've worked actually with Clark here at Envision and gotten a bunch of places that we donate to. But it's always in the works. It's a mass project that seems to it's never ending, and it's just really hard to find what works best, and where to donate and what to donate. And so it's an accounting, it's a legal, it's an IT. It's just really it's complicated, but so far we do the best we can with using North Bay.
Interesting. Basically, how do you, Matt, this is good. This is an excellent for you. How do you scale your service desk to ensure that as the workforce gets bigger, that's a usable, process? Like what do you use for service desk? How do you make sure that scales with the workforce?
Yeah, so from a people aspect, we had a ratio when I came on of 250 to 1. So for every 250 employees, we would get another help desk person. And kind of one of my goals this year, brought down to me by my VP, was push that number. Obviously, it will help our or our head count and budget and everything, but he actually cared more about pushing the people to make sure that they were fully utilizing their time the best they can. So right now we're at 315 to 1 as of end of July.
Mm-hmm.
So we've pushed that up. We're starting to feel the struggles of it, but it's really just paying attention to the trends. I mean, when I first started, we were getting about 500 or so tickets in a month. We're up to we'll probably break 1,500 tickets this month. If everything continues going the way that it is, and with our head count. But I'm always in reports, kind of playing with numbers and tweaking things and trying to see those trends, trying to see. I mean, I have it broken down by the office location of the ratio of how many tickets people put in and things like that, to really be able to figure out, probably come September, we will need another help desk person to get that ratio back down.
And what software do you use for that, for your help desk?
Yeah, so we use ServiceNow.
Got it.
I think that also helps kind of getting the best early on, instead of getting by with some of the not as great options, just because it might be cheaper or free or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So getting in early with something that can scale up as as big as it can go. So.
Okay. Matt answered this question before, so I'll go to Anthony and Vicky for this. There's a question of specifically which conferences, maybe if each of you have one or two conferences that you go to, that you find really valuable. Let me read the exact question here. Yeah. So specifically, which conferences do you want to attend? So Anthony, one or two that you've attended that you find very valuable.
Google Next and Octane.
Okay, great. Vicky?
BetterCloud and Octane.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony, I think you've been before, maybe. Okay, so with that, actually, that is a good prompt for me. So let me, just before we finish here, what I wanted to share is we actually we have our conference coming up. It's called Altitude. It's happening in San Francisco, September 23rd to the 25th. And would love for everyone who's on this. I looked at the people joining today. I think we've had a couple hundred people. You're the exact people we want at this event. Everyone, if you don't know, and if you haven't heard me talk about Altitude in the past, it's something very important to me. It's where we get together with our customers. It's very intimate. This is not a huge multi-thousand person event. This is pretty intimate. I think this year will be about 350 people. So it's intimate. We have no sponsors. This is really about having the kind of conversation that we just had here, having that kind of conversation in person. And this is where we determine our roadmap. Honestly, we come in with all the things we want to do, and based on what our customers tell us, that's what we go build. This is where we determine what kind of events we should be doing throughout the year, not even about BetterCloud, just about the community. So I think it's a pretty special event. it's and so if you're available, if you're in the specifically if you're out in the valley, it's very easy. But if you can make the trip, we'd love to have you there. So you can see the URL there, altitude.bettercloud.com, and we'd love to have you there. So with that, we're running out of time here, so I want to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Matt. This was amazing. I'm really an honor to talk to you, have all of you on this at the same time. And I appreciate all the insights and the transparency. I think based on even the questions that I saw coming in, this is valuable. This is valuable. Just hearing how other people are dealing with the problems, in some cases just therapeutic. I think just hearing that other people have the exact same problems is therapeutic. So if nothing else, thank you for that. And if anyone has feedback on this, if you enjoyed this, didn't enjoy it, had other questions that you wanted answered, you could always email me, dave@bettercloud.com. And yeah, any final thoughts from anyone, the panelists?
Stay strong, and automation is your best friend.
Yeah. I can say that. I mean, the day-to-day grind can be a little hard. Don't forget to poke your head out, and feel free to iterate where you can. And just because you're doing it this way right now doesn't mean that's going to be the best way tomorrow.
It's great. Thank you, Matt.
I was just going to say, yeah, I'll second kind of everything that was said. And definitely, like Vicky said, automation is your best friend, and anything that you can automate, don't let your people think that you're automating them out of a job. Get them to figure out the automation of it, so that way they have a new job to go to when you need people to automate stuff.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining today. And have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.